Good evening to you. It's good to be with you tonight as we continue our lessons on the Gospel of John, the Gospel that was written to you and I. I say that to you and I, maybe not all of you, but it was written to those people that already believed in Christ. It was the last of the Gospel that was written, and it was written to the Christians because there was people that had there was people alive that they didn't have firsthand knowledge and people that knew Christ firsthand. The people was leaving. It's almost like I miss a generation of people. I miss a generation of people because when I was young, I would talk to people. I remember talking to some men I enjoyed talking to that had fought. This is going to be hard to believe. Don't think I'm that old, but I am. Men that had fought in World War I. Now that was a long time ago, I know, 100 years ago. But when I was just a young boy and a teenager, there was a lot of men around, quite a few, that I could listen to their stories about going over to France and the fighting. There was a lot of people that I knew that could tell me about fighting in World War II and the Europe and the campaigns and the flying and the being in so many things that now with children, young people today, they can only see it in movies and not hear it. But back in the Bible time, they didn't have movies. In the time of John, it was towards the end of the first century, towards later. And there was people that was Christians that didn't know anyone. John was the last of the apostles to live. He lived longer than the others. He was younger. And so he, I think in his life, saw that there was a need for people to know about Christ. And he wrote to the Christians, because he had that view and wanted the Christians to know that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of God. We saw in the first of it, the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. And all of this. We see Christianity in John in a very deep way. In John chapter 7, we saw so many great things that he'd done and talked about and how he corrected them. But at the end of it, it said this in verse 53 of John 7, and everyone went to his own house. Isn't it great that people we have houses to go to? I'm thankful that later tonight that I can go to my house and be in my bed and the comfort of the things around me. But I want you to look at the very next verse in chapter 8. It says, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. He did not have a home really there in Jerusalem to go to. I know he could rent an upper room and all this, but he went. Why did he go there? He went to the Mount of Olives, a hill we would call it, where the olives and the garden was, and he spent time there. It doesn't say that he slept, because we know a lot of times, a little later, we're going to find out that Jesus stayed awake and prayed while his disciples slept. But Jesus was there. It says now, early in the morning, he came again unto the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. This man from Galilee that just the day before, they had decided, the leaders, that how could he be a teacher? He comes from Galilee. But notice that all the people came to him. They came to him because they saw basically what he was, if they didn't understand who he was. But they came to him. And he sat down and he taught them. But then the scribes and the Pharisees brought to him a woman. The scribes and the Pharisees was used to the people coming to them and them being the teachers. And They brought a woman. It says the scribe and the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said to him, Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say? Well, they was tempting. We know that. They was trying to tempt. But the thing about it is, they were saying they knew the law, but they sure didn't act like they knew the law. Because first of all, if we look at Leviticus, and they talking about Leviticus chapter 20, verse 10, where there the law says that a man that commits adultery, a woman with a married woman, it goes into that. It says, both of them, those that are caught, both of them shall be killed. Now, if she was caught in adultery, I hate to tell y'all, well, I think y'all know this, Biology 101. It takes two to have adultery. And they brought the woman. That's the first fallacy they had. Who was the man? Where was the man? They brought this woman to him and said, she was caught in the very act. Well, and also, if they was caught, they said that. But the law also said that there needed to be a witness. And we don't see them talking about the idea of a witness. There needed to be a witness to this. And we do not see this. There needed to be a witness. There was no witness there. Matter of fact, it goes on here. It says, and teacher, we say this, now Moses' law commanded us that we should be stoned. But what do you say? And they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him. Because they gave him half the story, and they wanted him to tell them something was going to be wrong. When somebody asked you something that you cannot answer, because they didn't have all of it, they just brought out part of it. What did Jesus do? It says, but Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. He wasn't paying attention to him. He heard him, but he just sat down and started writing on the ground. So they continued asking him. They didn't ask him once. Well, you want to tell us? I can hear him, repeating. Sometimes if you want somebody to answer, you just keep asking the question. They asked the question. Now, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? And they were supposed to be they was the ones that the scribes and the Pharisees that knew the law, but they wanted him to give an answer to a question that they had not basically told all of it, because it's like I said, they were supposed to have a witness of 2 or 3 witnesses. And so they continue asking him, and he raised himself up, and he said to them in verse 7, he who is without sin among you, let him throw a stone at her first. Well, again, we talk about this, and those that let him, cast the first stone. Again, we go back in Deuteronomy 17, it had to be someone to cast the stone, and they had a precise way. When somebody was caught, there had to be a witness against them. And then they brought them up. And the witness couldn't just say, hey, we saw him, kill him. The law was that the witnesses had to pick up and throw the first 2 or 3 stones. They had to be the one. It was like them saying, okay, nobody was willing to pick up the first or the second stone to throw at her. I'm saying that, it's almost like they didn't have an eyewitness there. They had, she was caught, but nobody was willing to say and pick up the first stone and throw it at them. It says, let's throw at her first. Well, when this happened, I love the way it goes on in verse 8. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. He said this. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience. The silver lining in all of this, if there's anything about this, the silver lining is they had a conscience. Somebody said, well, first of all, if a person doesn't, I believe there cannot be a person converted from sin to God, to Christ, if they don't have a conscience. And it says, those who heard it being converted by what? Their conscience went out one by one, beginning with the oldest, even to the last. Beginning with the oldest. Is that saying that a conscience is something that's learnt? Have you ever thought about that? Brother Kelly and the rest of you, a conscience is something that really a child is not born with in the sense of knowing right from wrong. It's something that we learn. And yes, I have saw men who was very ornery and mean when they was young. When they get older, I've had, I don't know how many men come to me and said, my daddy is so much different around my kids than he was me when I was a kid. A lot of times it is conscience. I've heard men tell me, I wish I could have another chance to be with my kids. I think that's why God gives us grandkids in a lot of sense. So here, our conscience is something that we need to cultivate. And this is they said this. And it says they began, and it said then, and Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing there in the midst. They had left. Those people that brought her, maybe they didn't have the eyewitness. In a way, they didn't have anybody that was willing to lift that first stone and throw at her. And then he that is without sin, they got the feeling they knew what they was trying to do. They was mad at Jesus, but they was willing to have a woman killed to get at Jesus. Man, that's bad. But their conscience was struck. Then it says in verse 10, and Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman. He said to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Have no one condemned you? Now, here again is evidence to me that there wasn't a witness. Because he did not say, where are those that witness you? It says, where are those that are the accusers of you? So oftentimes, has no one condemned you? And she said, no one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, neither do I command you, but go and sin no more. I don't condemn you, but go. Did he condone sin? No. He said, I'm not going to condemn you, but go and sin no more. That's what he told her. And we can see, I have to go to verse 12. Then Jesus spoke to them. The scribes and Pharisees wasn't the only one in that courtyard, I don't believe. There was others there. But after they left, after he said that to the woman, then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Those people that knew what the Old Testament said, in the sense they knew it, but they didn't know it in their hearts. He was telling them and these people, I am what? The light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in what? Darkness. It's a sad thing when people professing to be Christians walk in darkness, bringing accusation and accusing and rumors about other people. That is such darkness. We have to go back, and we can look at James 5:5, where it says, love your what? Love your enemies. Friend, I asked you to do this. I asked you to love your enemies, but hate sin. I believe that is what Christianity, what Christ was about. Even when they hung him on the cross, he looked and he said to God, forgive them. They know not what they do. I believe many of them that was there later in the day of Pentecost, their conscience was struck, and they believed, and they turned to Christ. If you're not a Christian, if you're watching this, I pray that your conscience would be struck, that you would see and that you would come, obey the Lord. And if we can be of your help to you here at Newberry, or contact us, we are here to help you. And God be with you till we meet again.